Hey everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the live Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee, and if you've noticed, something's different here. Our CEO, Nate Pearson, is not here. He's on vacation, but our head coach, Chad Timmerman, is here.
Hey everybody.
On the other side of things. And
I feel like I should say hey-o.
And a special guest on our side here, Pete Morris from Team Clif Bar Cycling.
Howdy, guys.
Pete, you work for TrainerRoad now.
I do, yes.
We're pretty happy about that one, man.
I'm pretty happy too. It's a good
get.
Yeah, no doubt. And what we're going to do is a Q&A with Pete today. So it's going to be all things, questions about criteriums, race tactics, nutrition, because you have a degree in nutrition, but also any other bike racing things. Whatever you have questions on, you can send those in, and it's going to be more relaxed, just kind of discussion Q&A. We did pull through some questions that we felt like would be good conversation for this group of three here. But just the same, please send them in because it's really going to be about the questions that you send in during this one. And we've already got them coming in, so that's good to see.
Awesome.
But with that, guys, let's kick off the proper podcast.
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome to the podcast. It's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee, here with our head coach, Chad Timmerman.
Hi, everybody.
And a special guest, Pete Morris from Team Clif Bar Cycling.
I guess.
And Nate Pearson is not here, our CEO. He's the usual co-host. He's on vacation in Hawaii. As you can see, we have, or if you're just listening to the podcast, we have a box of Doughboys donuts on the table. Things change when Nate's out of town.
Vacation podcast.
Yes, this is the vacation podcast. So this is going to be more of an open Q&A. We're live streaming right now on YouTube and Facebook. For those that are listening to the podcast, you can just find us there on those channels next time. It's usually Thursdays at 8 a.m. Pacific. And you can jump on there and you can interact with us live. And this one's going to be more of a relaxed feel. We're just going to be having some conversation around things that Pete knows well.
Hopefully, right?
Yeah. Criteriums, race tactics, nutrition. You have a degree in nutrition.
Yes.
We'll be talking about, and you're a heck of a mountain biker too. You're just a bike rider in general. So if you have questions and you're with us live once again, submit those and we'll be going through those. But before we go any further, a few things really quick. Let's just intro you, Pete. Where are you into bike racing?
So I'm actually from Carson City, Nevada, which is just down the road, and born and raised there. I went to UNR, which is here in Reno, for school, and then the last 5 years or so I lived in Denver. I actually got into cycling pretty late. I started as like a senior in college, then I was a super senior and a super senior again because cycling was so much fun, pretty much. But yeah, I think I started when I was 21 or so. And the real funny story is Nate, our CEO's claim to fame is he brought me to my first bike race, and it is true. We lived together, and he said, "You have a bike, I have a bike. Let's go do this bike race on Tuesday night." And I'm pretty. The story changes. I'm pretty sure I beat him, but he's pretty sure he beat me. But what I do know is we got second to last and last.
Nice.
So however that works out. But yeah, it kind of hooked me then, and I was my go-to is if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be bike focused all the time, every single part of my life is focused around bikes, I would just laugh and say, you have no idea what you're talking about. And now here I am. So
awesome. And you race for Team Clif Bar Cycling. Do you want to, intro the team a little bit?
Yeah,
too?
So I race for a domestic elite criterium focused team. We kind of race all over the country. There's actually 14 or 15 of us, and so we've got rolling squads that go to the big criteriums around the country, like up next for us is Athens. There's going to be a squad in Dana Point Grand Prix because it's a PRT, like the highest caliber race that exists in the U.S. right now, or at least that we can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just kind of send squads to Athens, to Boise, to any we are a USA Crits team, so I think there's 12 of them or 13 of them this year, but we try to make our marks at big national criteriums across the country and race locally and regionally all the time in between.
Awesome. If people haven't listened to the previous podcast episode that we released on Tuesday of this week, It was a special episode where Nate and I were actually at your team camp.
Yes.
And we discussed the objectives that you guys have with team camp, and then we also discussed thereafter. We discussed really in-depth race tactics stuff.
Yeah, Nate loves the tactics.
He does. Gets very, very theoretical. So, in this case, I guess if you haven't listened to that episode, I would recommend doing so after this. It's a unique insight into a different take on team camps, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in this case, I think you'll be able to hear next week from the Mark Pro team, and they have a very different take, at least on their team camp that was going on in this case. So, it's interesting stuff. And we'll actually be doing this again next week, but with a guest from the Mark Pro team. So Dave Christensen, who also works at TrainerRoad. Convenient.
You guys are pretty stacked around here.
We are, aren't we?
A lot of fast guys.
Yep.
And girls.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
So which races, you talked about the races that the team's going to do. Which races are you planning on doing?
Yeah, I think it sounds like we have so many fast guys on the team that it's a battle to get to go to the races you want to go to. So I think the last spot in Athens is not up in the air, but there's a running. So I'm going to race Santa Cruz this weekend. The same time as Athens is Dana Point Grand Prix, that's actually my best result ever. Nice. So it's sort of suited towards me, much more so than Athens. So maybe I'm deciding which direction to go. I think I'm leaning towards Dana Point. And then actually I'm getting married this year, so my season ends a little earlier for honeymooning time. So I think Tulsa or Air Force is beginning of June, and then maybe there's going to be some Tour of America's Dairyland. There's a big race in Reno called Tour de Nez, which I've been close a bunch of times, and I've decided now that I live here, I'm gonna throw down the gauntlet for sure. This is the year. Nice. So that's a big one, and then I get married a few weeks later, so it's probably back to mountain biking when we get back from that.
Attaboy. Good man. So if you've listened to the podcast recently, you've heard Nate getting pretty fired up about Pete making a call out to us here, saying that Pete, and he's an incredibly fast racer, but he's also a very savvy and experienced racer too, right? So you said that we won't beat you in a single employee from TrainerRoad won't beat you in a criterium in our local series this year, right?
Yeah, I did say that.
Okay.
It was at team camp after. It was later at night, but I think there were drinks involved. I think Nate started with, "Would you be able to wear a TrainerRoad kit during the local Tuesday nights?" And I said, unfortunately, if it's a road race, I have to wear a Clif kit. That's just the way it works. And he goes, "Well, we're gonna beat you then." And I said, "That's impossible." And so that's what kicked it off. And then for the next couple hours, Nate talked to me and everyone on my team about, how is it possible that I could beat five guys, or even just Nate? Nate had just dropped me on a climb at team camp.
So he's feeling pretty good.
He was feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
And then so we sort of went through the scenarios, which is Nate's favorite. And I think he's coming around, but it's going to be a good battle. I think it'll turn Wednesday mornings after our Tuesday night crits into something really, really fun around here.
Any work done?
Never.
No, not for like half a day probably.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of tough. But anyways, if you're wondering, or I guess if you've heard that, this is the guy that we're going to have to work together to try to beat this year.
And as a reminder, I issued a similar statement to Nate way back, and we all see how that went. I told him he will never beat me, period, in anything. So that's been his quest since then. So this is not a fire you want to light unless you're fully ready to deal with it.
It does not get doused.
What really started the fire was, I said, I'm probably most worried about Chad. And Nate went, "What are you talking about?"
He's a savvy guy, man, and he's strong. So if you're with us live, remember, just send in those questions. A bunch of them are coming in, and we'll get to those in just a bit. But Chad, let's take advantage of this opportunity to talk about how we're training on our TT bikes, and Nate isn't, our normal co-host.
Yeah. So we know Nate's training. He's in Hawaii on a vacation right now, but he's using it as a training camp. So he is going to put in a lot of miles, and he has some pretty lofty power goals, et cetera, but he's doing it all on his cross bike. So while the fitness should be legitimate, the specificity in terms of actually putting out big power on a time trial bike is a bit questionable. It's not to say he won't gain a lot from it, but we're back here, struggling in our basements and weight rooms and whatnot. in time trial position, refining our position, trying to get used to actually generating power in that position.
Yeah.
So we're taking a slightly different tack at the moment.
So, I mean, I've always known it's specific, right? Just like I know space is cold, but I guarantee you if you put me into space, I'd be like, oh my, that is really cold. And right now, when I'm in that position, oh my gosh, I am blown away. First of all, there's the ego hit, but I get over that pretty quickly. That's fine. But there's a big ego hit that a lot of people have when you get into aero position. You're just not able to produce the power that you once were. Like
right?
Yeah. Like in my case, I think a
transition.
conservative estimate of my FTP just a week prior to this was around 298. I feel that's pretty conservative. And that's at like 5,000 feet elevation where we're at. And then I get onto the TT bike, and if I'm honest, I think I would really struggle to hold like 265 to 270 right now in the aero position for an hour.
Which as a percentage of your FTP is?
Geez, I'm dropping like 20% almost. So
Yeah,
or
and this is
15%,
exactly
15%.
exactly the reason why I've been on the time trial bike almost exclusively since January or early January, knowing full well that it's not an easy transition to make.
It certainly isn't. I mean, I have 2 months to make this transition basically until race time. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
And actually, that's one of the reasons why. So I usually ride rollers, but I have decided for now to not ride the rollers because, and something that people need to understand, riding rollers is not like riding outside at all. It's very different. It's much more akin to learning to ride with no hands than to ride outside. It's because your front wheel and rear wheel, they're on decoupled surfaces. Even though there's a belt driving them, they can move independently. So it's very unique. I like riding rollers. I love it for all of my workouts. But in the TT position, it requires so much additional strength throughout your whole body. The amount of muscular contraction going on and strength required to hold yourself in line, it simply does not allow me to hit my goals right now, which my goal is I need to get my power up in that position.
Yeah, you'd be spending all your physical resources and mental resources on just balancing.
Yeah, not crashing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just not an efficacious way to train.
Right. Like 260, if I were to hold like 260 for a while on the TT bike, even though heart rate's variable and crazy and everything else, but I see a jump from around 150 beats per minute to up to like 175 if I'm in the rollers. It's crazy. So I've shelved those for now. And I cannot wait until the whole thing is done, and then I can get back on them and do some mountain bike training on that. But anyways, that's kind of how our TT training's going. You can see on Strava me lamenting the position all the time. So, but anyways, it's hard work. So with that, why don't we get into some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Tom, he submitted this one from YouTube. He says, you say you're not a pure sprinter, so how would someone like you who has a smaller chance of winning in a bunch sprint go about winning a crit? Thanks.
Ooh. So even though I'm not a pure sprinter, I'm a pretty good sprinter. So all I have to do is be the best sprinter that's still there.
So yeah, let's cover that really quick, right? Because like I'm sure that you see this too, right, Chad? Where you see riders come into a crit or a race and they're like, "Yeah, I'm a sprinter."
Yeah.
But then when you race with a higher caliber group of folks, you're like, "Oh,
realize,
maybe not."
Oh, I'm not a sprinter. Yeah, and it's not very often that it comes down to a full bunch sprint where everybody who started the race, maybe you've got 10 really good sprinters, but again, like Pete says, how many of those sprinters are going to be there in the closing laps and then be able to generate a reasonably fast sprint?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of, I would never choose like a totally flat four-corner race to save up everything for the sprint. It's just not going to go my way. Maybe that's a top 10 or a top 5 or something. But if there's like this weekend is the Santa Cruz crit and it's got like a 30-second, 5% power climb, kind of a sketchy fast downhill, some turns, all those are in my wheelhouse. Yeah. So I'm hoping that there'll be 10 guys at the end of that race instead of 50. And me sprinting against 10 guys is probably as good of a chance as I get. So, or 5 guys. Really, if there's a breakaway with 5 guys, that's the way I really want to sprint. When everybody's tired, there's more tactics and just who's trying the hardest at the end.
And with that bit of a climb, is it kind of a race of attrition? Do you just
people
just fall off?
Yeah, just every lap someone's gone, right? And it's kind of one of those races where every time you turn around, you feel like you're in the front of the field, you're halfway, and then you turn around, there's 2 guys behind you, and then you move up, and then 5 laps later you turn around, there's 2 guys behind you, or something like that. And that's one of those that style of racing. Either if it's as close to me getting dropped as I possibly can, and still being there at the end, that's the race I'm going to do the best at.
Gotcha.
Which is actually true for almost any sprinter, right? You want to be just fast enough to make it past some other sprinters, and you just want to be the last guy standing that can still generate something at the end.
in one respect, that's almost, I mean, that is the point of a lead-out train in one respect.
Yep.
Like, there are plenty of points to it, but in one respect is to make it fast enough so that people either have to drop off or they're just not,
Yeah, use energy
Yep.
too early to stay in the mix of things, and then all of a sudden their sprint isn't the same.
Yeah.
The armchair ride is what they call it, right?
Diluted sprint, yeah.
It's so relative to the field, though. Like, in a local, like in local crits, there are times when suddenly I become a viable sprinter because not a lot of people show up. But like, it's very field dependent. And I think that learning different strategies like that and being versed at like, no, I can build, I can sprint decently, but I can also break away, and I know when to do that, or I know when to, hold whatever else. I think it really makes sense to vary yourself because you never know the fields you're going to end up racing against, you know? Yeah, very field dependent.
Yeah, and I think what it always comes down to is knowing your best chances of success, right? Like,
sure.
If it's a local field, always the lead outs are a little faster and shorter, right? It's not that long drawn out one. So like at the Tuesday night, it's almost always like one lap all out as hard as you can go, and that's worse for me. So I need to figure out a way not to make that lead out happen. Where that's a pretty good pop for you at the end, where you can just jam it for the last 150 meters, and then you have as good a shot as anyone. So
right.
Well, and you also have to recognize that there's a high level of fitness required regardless. Doesn't matter how good a sprint you have, you still have to get to the finish line or get to that last lap.
Still have something.
Yeah, and some races, I mean, you can be, even if you're close to the top of your fitness, you can be gassed the whole time. And the idea of mustering a sprint in those closing laps, which ramp up also, is it's a big ask.
Yeah, the whole, like, I see a lot of people always, like, say, like, how fast is Cav, like, on the climbs, Or, like, how fast is...
much faster than I am,
for
example.
And that's the thing that, like, people don't realize because they're seeing it relative to Froome at the front, and then they see this guy that's struggling in the back. Well, he's been riding at Tour de France pace for 2.5 weeks, like... And he
5,
specializes...
6, 7 hours a day.
Yeah, and he specializes in something that's totally different. So it's like it's not that they're slow; they're still extremely
still
fast.
Ridiculously
they have a
fit.
high level of fitness.
Like Andre Greipel is Chad and I's size, and he does like 500 or 550 watts up all the climbs, like all the shorter, not less than 10-minute climbs.
Crazy.
Like, and he's a pure sprinter.
Yeah,
and he can hang because he can do just insane actual wattage too.
Yeah,
and that's like Peter Sagan. Everyone looks at him like he's just this blessed, gifted. He has fun and he's good at what he does. His level of fitness is really unrivaled.
Unrivaled.
Yeah.
This
is a big one. What's your favorite Clif Bar flavor?
Ooh, so we're gonna split this into two categories. There's the classic Clif Bar, which now they've just come out with the nut butter filled ones.
So good.
Which are really good.
Yeah.
The best. They're kind of like if you had a Pop-Tart that was combined with a Clif Bar, and then you put like peanut butter or almond butter or like Nutella in the middle.
Or blueberry
or
almond
blueberry.
Fatty sweetness.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And then that's definitely my favorite Clif Bar, original Clif Bar. And to be honest, I eat a lot of Luna bars and a lot of the kids' Z bars because
they're good snacks.
They're good snacks. And there's not very many times in my life where I can deserve a whole portion of a Clif Bar nowadays, to be honest. It's a slippery slope, and somehow I can't eat every Clif Bar I want to eat anymore.
Yeah.
So a Kid Z Bar or a Luna Bar is the right size.
Those are all made by Clif.
Yeah, they're all made by Clif. So
that I like that, and I call them baby food packets. I think they're called energy food or something like that.
Organic energy food.
Yeah, but the one that's banana, mango, coconut, I think is
with the little chunks of coconut.
Oh, it's so good. It's delicious.
It's good.
Yeah,
so I have real sad news. I think it won't exist anymore.
Oh no!
I know.
We need to call Gary.
We can get a big big shipment in.
Okay, good. Let's see. The next one is from Erica. She says, and this one came from Facebook. She says, I race crits in a half-mile oval. I'm often in the back, so when we go into a turn, I end up braking to not run into the person in front of me, only to have most of the field overtake me after the turn. It's like an accordion effect. What am I doing wrong?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. It's that's the hardest way to race an oval circle. And what this all comes down to is when a crit racer realizes that they don't have to brake going into corners, it kind of transforms the type of racer they are. And I've met guys across the spectrum who get paid money to ride their bicycles who still grab handfuls of brakes to go into corners. And the thought that if you're 50 feet away from the corner, 100 feet away from the corner, you don't necessarily have to pedal all the way to the corner and then brake, right? Like if if you're looking at the field, you can guess. You've seen him go through the corner a bunch of times. You can guess how much pedaling you actually need to do to minimize the amount of braking. And so if you can pedal to, there's always some good footage in like the national caliber crits of guys barely pedaling at all on the back and never braking for a corner. And that's the easiest way to race the race. Like, you're definitely not racing, but if you want to use the least energy possible, it's timing your pedaling so you don't have to brake into the corner. So if you give up the pedaling and watch that gap open up, as soon as everybody brakes for the corner, you kind of slot back in. And the perfect way to do it is, as you're making the corner and they're re-accelerating, you kind of slot right into the back of them without any extra work. And they all braked and accelerated, and you just pushed right into the back of them, and then you're pedaling again at your normal.
It's part of that myopic view that you get when you see that wheel in front of you. You feel like you have to hold it closely the entire time, regardless of turns, regardless of the decelerations that come prior to them and the accelerations after. I mean, the acceleration after is certainly important, but prior to it, just like he says, if you let off a little bit, maybe a gap opens up. But as soon as the person in front of you starts braking for that turn, because the person in front of him or her did it as well, you're right back where you wanted to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that you have to hold that wheel only when you need to hold that wheel. And that's something that, so it's interesting. It's, in one respect, it competes with something that I put into place in mountain biking a lot of the time, which is digging for speed, which is basically I look at every square foot or every foot along that course, and I think I want to increase the amount of speed I'm carrying, right? So I'll hold it on longer, and I'll brake a little and I'll brake a little later, that sort of a thing. But it's never done at the cost of losing momentum. Like, the goal, if I charge in and then I brake a bunch and I lose that momentum, gaining it back is something that you really have to consider.
That's the hardest way. That's the hardest part of racing.
Yeah, so it's not only like speed, right, but that there's so much cost to gaining speed back that you have to think about it. You have to think ahead a bit, and you have to roll through smoother and do everything else like that. And if you look at the top crit racers, at the top cyclocross racers, at everybody else, they roll so smoothly through things. And that's like Tobin Ortenblad, for example, watching that guy race, and top guys, Jeremy Powers, all the other guys, Stephen Hyde. But Tobin's very skilled at just maintaining momentum. And he's always been a bigger guy, and I wonder if that's kind of forced his hand into that, but it's been really good for him.
But it's a product of being relaxed, of having a bit of foresight, but largely experience. And so we're talking about somebody who's a new criterium racer here. I mean, we're not going to say you're going to pick this up right now. This is again the benefit of a lap race. You're going to do 20, 30, 50 laps. Every time, refine it in some way. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you won't, but you're going to learn something each and every lap.
Even I still get it wrong sometimes. You know, like I'll tell the real secret is, if you can do that same technique in the middle of a field where you're racing with no one else. I mean, you're racing with everyone around you, but you're still doing the same kind of easing off and not accelerating, and you just flow through the pack. Like, that's the difference between being a really good crit racer and a normal crit racer, right? It's employing that same tactic with a bunch of things going around you at the same time. So it's the perfect way to learn when you're hanging on the back. Tail gunning. We made a shirt called TCB Tail Gunners once. And that's
Nice.
That's because that was in our skill set.
Nice. Good, well spoken there. I think that something else that you should remember is, if you are braking, chances are, if you're braking into a turn, if you were coasting into that turn and assuming that you aren't going in too quickly, you're probably going to be at I should say you have a lesser chance at crashing, at losing traction, anything else like that. I think a lot of people, when they brake, not only does that cause tension throughout their whole body, which makes their handling suffer, but then also, if you're braking into a turn and you're the type of person that's eagerly on the brakes at all times, you're going to find yourself getting into situations where you brake mid-turn in a bad moment, and that's when you just easily lose traction. It really pays a lot of dividends to just not rely on them.
You either lose traction or it stands the bike up, neither of which are desirable. Yeah. So it just doesn't pay off. Once you learn to let those brakes go. I remember talking to somebody years back before I even started racing Tour de Nez. And they watched the Masters race, and everyone was impressed. And then she looked at me and she's like, now the pros race, or now the pro race starts. These are the guys who don't use their brakes. I'm like, well, to be fair, neither do the Masters riders, not the fast ones, but I understood what she meant.
Yeah. One other thing, Erica, too, that I would mention, I don't know, you probably very well know this. This is a common thing in pace lines and everything else, but if somebody slows down in front of you, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to hit your brakes. You can offset your line safely so that you just catch a little bit more wind or anything else. And if you find yourself coming into these turns and you're intelligently kind of easing off and you're not charging in to hold that wheel coming into the turn frantically, but you kind of let that gap open up a bit and then you carry more momentum when they brake, that doesn't mean you have to brake once you catch their wheel either. That means that you can offset your line a bit and you can just drift to the side of them however else you need, and it really helps you maintain a lot of momentum and save energy.
And in the lower category races too, you do have an easier option of moving up. So you hear it all. This is my least favorite comment when I'm just dying on a race and I hear someone yell, "Move up, move up." Yeah, thought crossed my mind. So, but in the slower races, when you're sitting back there, you probably can. You probably can just get on it for a little bit and move up a handful of riders, move into a place that doesn't accordion quite so sharply.
Yeah,
and that's one of those on a real accordion-y race. It's worth the extra energy to get out of the back. Even if it totally smokes you, you're totally smoked anyways. Like if you're just sitting on the back, you're gonna blow. And so it's worth trying to get up probably halfway through the field, and that's where the accordion starts to minimize. But you're gonna lose if you're at the back anyways. So you might as well throw your cards in and get to the middle, and maybe you'll be okay.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah. Nutrition advice is needed from Gary on Facebook. He says, on very long endurance rides, 12 and even 24-hour rides, that sounds rough.
That's very long.
What is recommended to ingest some protein to keep the body from consuming muscle mass? So is that a concern, and then how do you address that concern?
So this is sort of out of my wheelhouse, right? 12 and 24-hour races, everything I know about them is it's what you can stomach. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you eat, but eating protein with fat on those long duration ones is going to keep you running a lot longer. And muscle mass is going to be used. It's just the way it is. Like it's 24 hours. You're going to burn 10,000 or 15,000 or calories. So there's just no way to actually. You can mitigate it even a little bit, and that's one of those ones where you recover afterwards. You get stronger from doing the 12 or 24 hours. Really, you want to fuel enough so that you stay at your goal intensity for those 12 or 24 hours. I think that's about maybe like I would probably, if it was me, I'd probably do some sort of like egg tortilla things, small more often. And start with as much real food as you can, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna lose it eventually. So if you make like 2 egg, maybe whatever I would do easy, like potatoes, eggs, and a tortilla.
Like a breakfast burrito.
Like a breakfast burrito.
I can tell you something people very probably will not do for 12 or 24 hours straight, and that's ingest goos and gels and blocks. You can't do it, and you're really not working hard enough to create that much of a sugar demand.
The sugar demand is so different during those 12 or 24-hour races that it's almost better to eat potato chips. Or I mean, it's don't quote me on that, but you will not be able to sustain eating gels and blocks and not kind of high sugar, high carbohydrate ones.
Probably high fructose, probably high maltodextrin, stuff that just rushes your liver and it gets to a point where it can't keep up. And then all the gastric issues start.
At hour 16, your body just wants to quit.
Like something to keep in mind with 12 and I'm sure you know this, but with 12 and 24-hour races, you will not really feel like doing any more of it when you get to hour 16 or beyond that. So the best thing that you can do is stack the deck in your favor with your nutrition. Rewards. And I can't speak highly enough to eating real food. Like I've actually done a 24-hour thing at some point. Yeah, Everesting, believe it or not. Yeah, Everesting.
What's that?
Well, I can tell you all about it. We probably should save it though. But when we did that, rice cakes, we had a bunch of different rice cakes. And we didn't have enough of them because we just burned through those. And you could have graphed it. It was so easy to see. And you can even see it on the video. There was like rice cake time. And then there was like we were out of rice cakes and just everyone's demeanor just dropped.
Yeah, rice cakes burn pretty fast though.
They do. But when we were eating enough of them like that, it wasn't too
sure
bad.
If you can keep up with it. But at some point over the course of 24 hours, you're going to get pretty tired of rice cakes.
Well, these ones we had varied flavors. We had like a blueberry graham one that was really good.
So those went first.
Those went pretty quickly. I think the ones that actually went first was bacon, egg, and brown sugar.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, that's a good
amazing.
one.
Yeah. And those ones, so those aren't necessarily just like pure rice. It has a little bit more substance to it. you're going to have to take in as much as you can.
And just get comfortable with the idea that you can probably eat just about anything in terms of, what the macronutrient breakdown is, how much fat, how much protein, how much carbohydrate. So, leading up to this experiment with what works well with your gut. Because, there's so many issues. Maybe you don't tolerate lactose. Maybe you don't tolerate gluten. Maybe you have a fructose malabsorption issue. So many things you don't know until you play with it. So certainly don't leave it till the day of the event.
Yeah, and whatever you think you need, bring more.
Yeah, twice as much.
Yeah.
Right? That's totally true. And that's a good rule for every race.
Yes.
Bring twice as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
Always.
if you're carrying too much nutrition, it's honestly not a bad thing.
I can't
give
remember
it away. You'll
Yeah,
make
exactly.
a friend.
You can make you can help somebody out in a bad time.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
Do you have any Clif Bars?
Yeah.
In fact, I do. Here you go.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Next question is from YouTube. He says, "What kind of jobs do your teammates work, and what are some jobs that allow time to train and time to travel to race?"
Ooh. That's a good question. So I kind of have a smattering of different teammates that all have pretty cool jobs. So let's start from since I used to live in Colorado. So Zach Allison runs the Source Endurance Center.
Yeah.
Source Center Endurance. Well, one of the
I
other.
can't remember which one it is.
And he has an awesome job that's bike focused. He gets to train a fair amount. He gets to help a lot of people. Since he's his own boss, he also gets to go for races and ride accordingly. Kevin and Connor both work at Stages in Boulder. The Mullervy brothers. And so since they're another kind of bike-focused company, they're pretty okay with taking vacation to go do bike races. They're understanding that it benefits them in the long term to have really motivated and enthusiastic cyclists being employed by them. Then you jump over to California. JD actually works at Sports Basement and is a bike fitter and kind of another bike job, right? Stefan works at The Spokesman, which is a bike shop in Santa Cruz. Then Miles is a nurse down in San Luis Obispo.
Jeez.
Jacob's a carpenter.
Slash Jacob has
everything.
A pretty good life. If you just follow Jacob on Instagram,
You'll like your life less.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. He has a sweet. It seems like he's always surfing or playing with a dog or building furniture or making a tiny house.
It's pretty awesome.
It's awesome. Jacob's someone you want to hang out with. If you make it down to slow, San Luis Obispo, give Jacob a ring and he'll take you on a ride and take you to coffee and do all that. And then we have more guys. I think Stu's an anesthesiologist. Chris Stewart is. Paul works in sales in Boise somewhere.
Okay.
Pretty much what we all do. Oh, AJ works at Envy in Utah. It's another. As you can see, there seems to be a underlying.
Jazz is different.
Jazz is a California State historian. So he travels all the time for doing, like, he was just at the Hearst Castle retiling the pool with up to historic code and things like that. Jazz probably has one of the coolest jobs, but it involves lots of car time. But his training, like we were lamenting yesterday on the phone that somehow training takes lower precedence than working sometimes.
Somehow.
But most of us use our vacation wisely. We choose to do bike races as our main source of fun. And then going in, I'm pretty sure everybody who has a job, they go in telling them that they race professionally for this other team, and that's something they do and they love. And most jobs, if they're worthwhile, I think are understanding and allow you to, like, whether it's using your vacation or, working shifts extra time. Like, even I came from Patagonia and they were really, really helpful with kind of letting me live the dream, right?
In terms of hours per week, is it pretty consistent across the team, or outliers?
I would say no one. I would say probably closer to 40 than anything else. And
working, and then what about training?
And then training, we all kind of laugh that we do the best we can. The reason we're crit racers is because you really only have to ride 6 or 8 or 10 hours a week. Like, you can be one of the best crit racers in the country on 10 hours a week for sure. Yeah. Many guys that race at our level do that or less. And it's just something like I say, it's a skill now. I still need to train, but this season I think we were talking about it at team camp. So now my best 20-minute power is like up 60 watts from team camp. and it's
Which is just a month ago.
Yeah, and or I guess not quite 30 watts, but since January 1st, I'm up 60 watts, which is enough so now that I can race, right? And it's just I know what my body needs to do.
But you've been racing bikes for how long
now? 9. This is my 9th year on Clif Bar.
So you can't come out hop off the couch and then train 10 hours a week and be a top level criterium racer.
No.
So he's got years and years of this.
Yeah, I've done this every year where if we do a real, like we race pretty hard for 6 or 8 months a year, that even though I take 2 months off and just ride mountain bikes for fun, it turns into 2 months later.
And you talk about, up to 10 hours a week, 10-ish hours a week, but then you're also racing. I mean, on top of that, and that racing is high-level training.
And that's where this racing, like if I do a race weekend, that's fitness for like 2 weeks. It feels like, I could probably not ride. For a month or two, I could just race, and it would fall off eventually. But the intensity is high enough, the volume's pretty good for me, and my body responds to racing in those super high-intensity efforts really well.
Most bodies do,
I'm just lucky, I think.
Yeah, that's a good setup. Another question from YouTube. Do you find that the beard adds watts or increases drag? Top tips for race-ready beard.
My beard is it's almost laziness.
Okay. Yeah.
I think my argument is always you get more cheering and crowd love if you look different than everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think the cheering and that is worth more than the aerodynamic drag.
That adds watts.
So if someone's yelling your name or like go beard or whatever, Thor, whatever it turns out to be, that adds more than the drag from the beard. And the beard care, I don't know, go to a professional, I think.
Didn't Specialized Wind Tunnel debunk the fact that
I think it depends on the beard. Yeah, because like the beard they did was very like neat and like closely groomed, and it didn't have an effect.
Didn't Wiggins have one on his hour record?
I think he might have. But the thing is, I think that it depends on the composition of one's beard. I think that if it's probably a bit loose and unruly, I'm sure there's quite a lot of drag. But if it's and it doesn't have to be closely shaven, but if it just follows the contour.
Considering the position you ride your bike with your chin basically into your chest, head down, I don't imagine it sees a whole lot of the wind.
And definitely not like your legs.
Yeah. And I have a bad low head position, so pretty much my beard is always
hidden. Yeah, that works pretty well.
So I don't know. Maybe it's beneficial. I'm going to go with the cheering outweighs the aerodynamic drag, for sure.
I agree with that.
That's a solid argument.
Another question is, Pete ever done a fixed gear crit or thought about doing a red hook crit?
So we were talking about it this year. The caliber of red hooks is so high now. I mean,
it's pretty gnarly.
It's really gnarly. The red hook, Brooklyn red hook is the same day as Athens, actually. So we were talking about, that's kind of sad that some of the best criterium racers in the country, or that's sad for red hook.
Yeah.
They're on the same day, same night. So
this could be good. It could be good for you guys.
Yeah, it could be good for us. Apparently, I've never even ridden. I've ridden a fixed gear bike, but I've never raced one. But I've heard that, like we were just talking about, not braking and smooth pedaling and things like that. And apparently, that's all fixed gear racing is. So if you're a smooth pedaler, smooth through the corners, relaxed guy, you excel at fixed gear racing. So we were talking, I think a few of us share the same size, so we were gonna get a fixed gear Argon 18 up and running and just see, because
give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think there's some guys that are interested. Keep an eye out for a red hook with a Clif Bar rider, and it could happen.
Technical.
Oh yeah.
And it's almost all luck. It sounds like. I mean, you can be the best guy in the world, and there's the crashes are pretty prevalent, and it's qualifying. There's crashes in qualifying. There's no guarantee that you're going to start the race. I think unless you're qualified top 10 or something. So you have to fight for a spot every time, and it's flying lap times and things like that. So which is actually beneficial. But we're definitely keen on trying it. I think we're going to need something to change up in the coming years to keep it fresh for us. So maybe that's a good option.
I think Stefan could really hammer one lap. I think he'd be
Stefan,
very good at that.
Stefan has done red hooks before, and I'm pretty sure always crashes. It sounds right.
Gotcha. This is from Eric. He says, do you guys have any tips for crit-specific workouts for a training camp where they will be combined with long hours on the bike? So I've seen this sort of thing done before, and I think this is what you're talking about, where you have a long ride, but within that ride, you're going to have some sort of workout within that, some sort of structure given to the ride that'll emulate, in this case, a criterium. Have you guys ever done anything like that?
Go ahead. Yeah, you want? We do. We definitely do some lead out practice, right? Even though we're not a lead out team, it's good training. It's good to understand how hard your teammates can go. It's kind of like a knowledge based thing where if you can do workouts that tell you how strong your teammates are in different scenarios, that's the best way. Like that's how to use your teammates efficiently in a race. And so maybe there's like you can go as hard as you can up a 1 minute climb or a 2 minute climb, or every climb you see on some rollers, you can go as hard as you can. And that kind of breaks down what the shakeout of your riders are. So that kind of, if someone wins the 1 minute climb, they're probably your second to last lead out guy, right? Like, or if the 5 minute climb, they get that one, like then they're the diesel at the beginning. And then we were talking about it yesterday, actually, the criterium drill, or the drills of criterium racing that aren't necessarily intervals, but the other stuff like the shoulder bumping and the pushing each other around and playing tag and things like that. I think that's worth just as much as the intervals the day before or the day after.
Totally.
Yeah. So really the only thing I have to add to that is just getting comfortable with the racers you'll race with. So just doing tight pace lines on downhills and windy roads and getting used to the way everybody moves and who's a little skittish and who's more relaxed and flowy, and just kind of getting a feel for how your teammates act on the bike.
And downhill is important.
Totally.
Like that rolling downhills or flats where you're going 35, that's when everything's amplified a little bit, so you can see who you feel most comfortable next to, who can actually pull. And if you're doing those like 35 mile an hour 10-second pulls or 40 mile an hour 10-second pulls,
scary.
That's what really teaches you to trust your teammates. And even it's all good hard work anyways, but there's a long downhill at team camp, and I'm sure we go average 40 for like 10 minutes, and it's everybody going as hard as they possibly can on a 3% downgrade with some rollers and stuff, and that just teaches you about your teammates so much. And so the downhill is actually better.
I can attest to that too, just from riding with you guys at team camp. I thought, geez, we're jamming like in a pace line, but really you guys are just riding. But at the same time, you were doing that. It wasn't like you guys were trying to take a KOM or anything else like that, but you were drilling it and you were rolling in really tight formation. And it was cool to see that sort of discipline on a ride that actually wasn't intended to be structured. It was just like, let's go out and do this ride. It's going to be this loop. It'll be fun. And everyone was hammering it on the climbs as much as they could. But the pace just never slowed down. And I thought that was another cool thing too, is that with these team camp rides that there's a lot of, and if you listen to the previous podcast I did with your team, you'll understand that there's a lot of bonding and relaxing and enjoying your time together off the bike. And then when you guys are on the bike, and at least on the specific ride that I'm thinking about that we did around there in Pope Valley area, it was like there really wasn't a whole lot of relaxing. It was just carrying on a fast pace the whole time.
Yeah, the hardest or the fastest easy you can get, right? Like, so we want to keep the speed high. It's easy in the back. We're definitely not going to drop anyone, but we're all working hard when you're on the front and you're keeping the pace steady and hard.
Yeah.
Easy fast, right? Is what we call it. So
yeah. Something that, just touching on the skills that you talked about, and I know this perhaps isn't exactly what you're asking here, Eric, but I think that it's such a good idea to once the ride is done to work on skills like that. When you guys have the other goals accomplished and you're in a fatigued state, I recommend finding something like a sports field that you can find, like a baseball diamond or anything else like that. And if you can find a spot where you can work on skills and you can, like we talked about, shouldering into each other, doing slow races where basically you have a start line and a finish line, and the last person to cross that line is the person that wins.
And there's something to be said about doing skills in a fatigue state. So, I mean, you build your skills fresh as possible. I mean, you want to get the proper movement patterns in there, right? You want to learn them in the optimal environment, but you need to basically instill those or really grind them in there.
Yes.
With the fatigue stuff, you need to know I can do this even when I'm in a fatigue state, because bike racing, you're in a fatigue state the entire time. It's just to what degree.
Yeah. One thing that we did too, which we haven't covered this on the podcast before, but we would do team relays, and this is with the juniors actually that I coached. We would do team relays, and then they would have like a CO2 that they would have to like put in the other person or hand off as like a baton to the other guy. But the interesting thing was When they got to their partner, they had to put in, we'd say like right jersey pocket or center jersey pocket or left jersey pocket. So they'd have to put in a specific thing, and it forces you to get close, to rub elbows, to bump, to lean on each other, and to realize, oh, it's fine if I lean on somebody. It's okay. Like building those sort of skills in an environment that's safe like that, paired with like the type of riding that we're talking about, it's super effective. So it'd be really helpful.
Those skills are not underrated. Like even at any travel race, you'll see JD and me or JD and Stefan leaned like a pyramid up next to each other, riding down the road on our coffee ride.
Explain that drill, because that's
super
useful.
So this is a good one. This gets you the most comfortable with being really not in control at all. If you're riding next to someone and you kind of lean shoulder to shoulder, so you're like an A-frame house, right? It's two riders shoulder to shoulder, your head's there, your shoulder's there, and then you just ride straight. And the first person to pull away loses. So you kind of keep riding. You can steer the other rider a little bit. They can steer you. Usually the person on the inside tries to push the person on the outside off the road. But so what you can get from that is you get used to pedaling decently hard while you're leaning on someone, trying to hold your line and steering. And the way to get off is you really push into them and pull back, and that straightens you out, and you're totally fine. And so that's what ends up happening in races a lot, where there's just nowhere to move, and so all of a sudden you have all your weight on someone, and the only way to get off of them is to lean into them further and pull back, right? And so that's the skill that keeps you from crashing. And knock on wood, like I almost never crash, and I think it's because I pay attention, and I purposely, like Chad was talking about earlier, being relaxed. And if you're relaxed, you're paying attention, and you know how to get out of a sticky situation, you almost never crash. I mean, it has to be.
It's real.
It's and I hate crashing, so.
It's the worst on the road bike. Yeah. So some quick ones that we're going to grab from YouTube. Nick says, it's always fun hearing about the power output of high-level athletes. How much focus do you put on your watts per kilogram, your power to weight ratio?
Not that much. I think I talk about it fairly frequently. A lot of good numbers for me is if I can do 400 watts for 20 minutes, I'm pretty happy. That means I have the base fitness to do pretty much any race in the country, at least crit-wise. And then I really go for the 30 seconds on or 20 or 30 second high burst ones with, I try to do them over 500 watts or 550 if I'm feeling really good, because that's what recreates the situations I'm used to. And one of the big benchmarks I look for in races, if it's a really hard race that I did well at and the power was there, usually I'll do 20 minutes above 475 or 500, however the breakdown is. But it's
cumulative.
Cumulative time spent above 500 watts is like 20 minutes at a hard race. So that means that I know in training I need to be able to do 10 or 15 minutes above 500, and then that stretches over into the race. So actually today, I think yesterday I had a pretty mellow workout, and today it's just time at 500 watts. Like I think I'm gonna do cloud burst again. I failed it last week, just didn't have it. But I sort of feel like if it's not at 500 watts, then I need to work the bottom end more. So I'll try it again and do the 30-second bursts at 500 watts. And if they're doable, then I sort of feel like they will be. I've come around a little bit. But just spending time at 500 watts for me is the biggest change. Sure. Once my overall fitness is there, then it's just getting used to spending lots of time at really uncomfortably high paces.
So okay. So you're saying you're basically an absolute watts guy, not a relative. You're looking at raw watts, big numbers, being able to do them over and over, high percentages of those big numbers. So you basically just put yourself in a tough spot. You're not really hung up on, is this 130% at 30 seconds, which furthers the fact that these are descriptive training levels. We're shooting for something in particular, what the body can do. We're not trying to nail a particular wattage every time. Pete's specifying wattages, but he knows it's at those wattages that those physiological occurrences are taking place.
Exactly. Yeah. And just I've done it long enough that now I know what's required, right? And so it's
Yeah, and your weight doesn't fluctuate much, like in terms of like, race season, you're probably going to be right around this weight type of a thing too.
I once the sun comes out, like once it's summertime and you just ride
so
more, like I pretty much lose 5 pounds instantly.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
It's
bikini season.
That's what it is.
So I think I weigh 205 or 204 or 203 depending on the day. I bet hopefully race season comes or travel races, I weigh 200, and then summertime I weigh 195. And then 195 I feel good. Like I'm pretty comfortable going up any climb or any even hilly, flattish road race. Mm-hmm. I'm at 195 pounds. If the power's there, it doesn't matter. And then I'm much more successful at the part where you win, right? Like where the race actually is won or lost. Mm-hmm. I'm much more successful at 195 pounds with big numbers than if I've weighed 170. I think I've gotten down to 178 or 176 in the past. Mm-hmm. And I was really fast, but I was really good at everything instead of exceptionally good at one thing. Mm-hmm. So it actually made me a better all-around racer, but I didn't win. And that's I couldn't turn it into success, which was really interesting to me.
You're kind of a jack of all trades. Then.
I was a jack of all. I would have been a perfect domestique, right? But then for whatever reason, as I gained some weight, my numbers stayed pretty high, and so for me, the best way to win races is to have big numbers, and the weight that goes along with it is kind of okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like you just said, like it's because you got a specific goal, which is crit racing, and you're not doing a bunch of crits that are like super steep and climby the whole way through. Yeah, you're specific about the races you target, so that's why that your scenario is what it is.
Absolutely, and I'm definitely a one-trick pony now. It's funny as you progress. If you get good at something, if you become better and better at something, you just
specialize.
You specialize.
Yeah.
So we were there. I'm hoping to change it up and get new goals, maybe something fun next year.
Keep people
guessing. But yeah, definitely I would I like for me the check mark is the numbers. Mm-hmm. Going back to that is if I can do 400 for 20 minutes, then I'm ready to do the higher intensity ones. So it's taken 3 months to get to the 400. Yeah. But now it's time to spend some time. My worst, I think I've talked about this too, I'm a terrible 1 minute or 90 second guy. It's pretty much the same as my 5 minute power. Like it just hurts too badly. I can't do it. So that I've worked on that in past seasons, and it didn't help me at all. Mm-hmm. Right? I spent a bunch of time kind of mitigating that Achilles heel, and it didn't make me a better racer.
It's all weakness versus limiters.
Yeah.
It was a weakness, but it wasn't limiting the way you raced.
Yeah.
So we got rid of that. So I don't even touch 90-second intervals anymore. Even 1 minute I do sometimes, but it's more to drag out. So 30 seconds is the most I ever have to go really hard is 30 seconds. So let's just focus on that.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. Another question from Brad. This is from YouTube. He says, "Do you follow TrainerRoad's training plans, base build, and specialty, etc.?" I think all of us here at TrainerRoad follow the plans, or we're testing something coming down the road. I think it's like fair to say that, right?
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. And we all, I would say everybody here follows a plan and deviates slightly for what everybody here is an intelligent, smart training person, so
knows when to tweak it.
So we all tweak accordingly, but definitely the build, base, and specialty is there.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm probably the most obvious exception. I don't follow a plan, but it's because I'm always working on something.
Yeah.
So trying to figure out
if you
any way to make everybody faster.
If you follow Chat's training plan.
Or if you were just following our plans and just doing that and nothing else, then we wouldn't be getting anything new done. So yeah, absolutely. A lot of testing goes on. Let's see here. Okay, John says, "I'm 57 and have been back training for approximately 1 year now. I've dropped over 3 stone. Oh goodness, what is stone?
That's 21 pounds.
Yeah.
Holy
21.
21 pounds?
Yeah, so 3 stones is 63 pounds.
Oh, no. Pound's 14, or a stone is 14 pounds. So we're talking 40.
I bet Brits are just laughing
so I'm looking right now. It's 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
14, so we're talking 42 pounds. Okay, he's lost a lot of weight.
Goodness. Good job, John. Yep. That's awesome. Yep. He says, next time put it in pounds, please. Just joking. He says, but I've noticed that my FTP has also dropped. Is this usual? And I assume what he means by that is, expected. I train around 5 to 7 hours per week, he says.
Yeah, so it's not usual. It's just the sacrifice you're making depending on how fast you're losing your weight. So if you do it too quickly, and weight loss has to be, if you want to maintain a high level of performance, if you want to do a whole lot of training, if you want to race well, in the process of losing weight, it has to be so gradual that it's frustratingly slow. If you want to do it rapidly, this is one of the consequences of it. When you starve your body for the fuels it needs to do the work it needs, it finds it elsewhere, and elsewhere is typically lean mass or your muscles.
Yep.
So you're sacrificing muscle, and weight goes with that, and it's the scale will tick down, but performance doesn't necessarily even maintain, let alone come up.
Yeah.
So it's just a product of how quickly you lose the weight and how sensibly you do it.
Yeah, I've seen some people like very gradually just. And I'm talking like seasons, a few seasons.
Unfortunately,
and they change their body composition just by, let's say that they start cycling, but they don't crash diet or anything else like that, right?
Yeah.
And then, 3 seasons later, they're able to get strong because they're training, and at the same time, they're not like
way back. I worked with a
dropping something
coach
too
who
severely.
was quite savvy, quite experienced, really high level racer, won just about everything at some point in time, and he put his riders on a 3-year trajectory. For the body type they were at and the body type they wanted over the course of 3 full years, not 3 seasons, 3 years.
Yeah, and that's something that we were actually talking about this yesterday, how a lot of people come into this situation where they say, like, I want to drop a bunch of weight and I want to raise my power. Should I crash diet for a bit and then focus on the training? And we were talking about this, how
we're talking about this.
Yeah, about how it's much better in almost every case to go through a situation where you are training consistently. And you had a saying for it, pounds in the kitchen, grams on the bike, right?
Pounds are lost in the kitchen, ounces are lost on the bike.
Yeah, and it's like basically if you take a conservative approach, but you train through it, it's probably going to deliver better performance over the larger time period.
Well, and over the course of it, you're improving performance, which is what we're all after anyway. So keep the performance on the upward, and then gradually tick that weight down.
And I think lastly, if you kind of crash diet and you lose a large chunk of weight and then make your performance come up afterwards, you're actually looking at the same elapsed time as if you would have done it slowly and surely and kept your performance high. And I don't know many people that want to be slow. It seems to make sense to me where you just be mindful and kind of have that trajectory where you lose a little bit of weight, but you stay fast, and lose a little bit of weight and stay fast.
And there's something to be said that, like, for racing toward the front of a race versus just racing in the back. So, like, let's say you crash diet for 6 months or something, and then your performance doesn't allow you, it suffers, and it doesn't allow you to actually race toward the front of the race. You're barely hanging on, or you're getting spit off, and you're having to drop or get pulled out of crits, something like that. Versus if you had just taken a more conservative approach, even though your weight might not be exactly where you wanted it to be at that time, or your power may not be exactly where it was, at least you were able to be competitive. So it's arguable to say that you got much more benefit over that same time span because you're able to dynamically race rather than just hold on and then hopefully not get spit out.
So you may look the part in terms of showing up and standing at the start line, but once the race starts, you look anything but the part.
And man. Assuming that you are training, assuming that that's going forward and you're taking care of that side of things, there's just so much to be said for race experience and for gaining that. And race experience is gained when you're in the race. And what I mean by that is toward the front, or
racing
at
the
least
race,
where the race is happening.
Exactly. You'd be surprised how different a race unfolds, how much more fun it is when you bring a good level of fitness. Forget the weight. Bring a high level of fitness to the table, see how much fun you have.
Yep, absolutely. Alex from YouTube, he asks, what nutrition is needed to bulk up and gain those numbers at a weight penalty? And those are the numbers, I guess, that we were talking about with you. So, the bodybuilders just think protein. I intake a bunch of protein, and then I bulk up. But what's your approach?
I think healthy food, right? Like it's amazing what eating healthy salads with lots of vegetables, lean proteins, good healthy fats. You can eat as much as you. I mean, especially if you're trying to get more powerful, turn into a stronger athlete. I think going to the gym and eating a lot of healthy food turns you into an entirely different person. Especially if you want to grow some mass and want some bigger power numbers. For sure, eat as much as you can, ride as much as you can, go to the gym, and your body will turn into the correct body composition to put out lots of power.
It's still almost like that whole taking a step back and just looking at it from with a wider lens, just looking at it from a general health perspective. Make yourself a very healthy human, and then enhance your performance from there. Just steer it.
I'm fully on board with that. If you're an extremely healthy human, you can be very good at almost any sport.
Pretty much.
And being a well-rounded human, like Chad and I went skiing we've been skiing weekends instead of riding our bikes because it's good
You're
for
humans.
us. Yeah, we're humans. Like
fun.
we want to have fun.
Yeah.
And in turn, I train harder on Tuesday because I know I skied on Saturday. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's starting with going back to it, lots of healthy food. Mm-hmm. Go to the gym. Gym helps with watts. If you want more watts, going to the gym gets you some watts for sure.
Oh yeah.
And
you can actually go onto our YouTube channel and we have a video all about that. Coach Chad's exercises that you can do.
Those ones are perfect.
Yeah. Another question from Alex. He says, a different Alex in this case, he says, any crit tips for someone who is more suited for climbs? This is interesting because when I first started cycling, I would say that in my mind, I was like, I'm definitely more suited for climbs, but I really just sucked. And I was light, so I was able to be relatively better than people.
Yeah, I'm a climber.
Yeah, exactly, right? But then once I got into criteriums, it just got destroyed, and I had no clue what to do. So I feel like I've learned a fair amount. But what would you guys say for folks that are in this situation where they feel like they're a climber, so probably a light build, maybe don't have the biggest power, probably, relatively speaking, but getting into crits?
I've seen plenty of guys who are light and look like climbers. Stringy legs. I mean, you can't imagine how they could muster a sprint, let alone hang on for an entire criterium. And they've got mad power. I mean, they can generate watts quick. They can stay on top of it. They're metabolically very fit. They don't have a ton of muscle mass, but it still works, which just furthers the fact this is an aerobic sport. You don't. While those big muscles that we're talking about are bigger muscles or strength do benefit you, especially if you're looking to chase high watts, they're not necessary. You can be a slighter build rider and still have a whole lot of punch.
And with that punch, with a lighter rider, you can follow kind of the snappier accelerations. It doesn't hurt as bad, right? So when the race is really popping off and people are attacking left and right, follow those moves, right? Like you're going to be in a better situation because you can handle those repeated accelerations better just because you're a lighter person. And then also when someone else is doing the grunt work, like getting up to speed is the hardest part in a crit, or the attack, right? To get up to 35 miles an hour. So if you're following wheels and the person in front of you is doing the large watts to get up to speed, and you're just on his wheel because you were paying attention and had the snappy acceleration, all of a sudden he's tired, you're off the front, and you're with 2 or 3 other guys. And then all of a sudden you get the advantage because you're a small guy. You can work the same, keep the speed high. It's the same amount of work for you as it is for everyone else, but everyone's getting less of a draft.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of benefits to being a small,
There are.
snappy, like climby guy.
Yeah. We even talked about like moving through the pack.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this theory that if you're a little guy, then you get pushed around by the big guys. And while that can totally be the case, I don't think that it's necessary, and I don't think that it's just purely based off of build. I think that as a little guy, you can fit through smaller holes.
The holes there's much more of them. Right?
Yep. And then the other thing that we talked about too is, if you can get your hips kind of in front of the other person's, you have a kind of a rule for
there's just a lot to be gained by learning to move around in a field. And another, in fact, the same guy who told me the 3-year trajectory for body recomposition had told me, I want you over the course of this road to 2.5-3 hour road race, I want you to move from the front of the field to the back of the field to the front of the field 10 total times. So I had a very specific goal, and he meant in the field, not get to the outside and drop to the back and then hammer to the front again, but actually make my way diagonally all the way to the back, get to the front, and keep on doing that. He had no goals beyond that for the race.
Everybody in the race is going, Chad, what are you doing?
they're not even noticing. They're watching their own thing.
Right.
But over the course of that, the other point he imparted is that you are in control once your hip is in front of their bars, or even with their bars. So every guy wanted to move diagonally and get around, I would just work to a point where my hips were even with his bars, and then I'd focus on the next guy and do the same thing. And it worked wonders, and it changed me as a mass start racer.
I find smooth racers, ones in smooth comes from a knowledge of how to maintain momentum, a knowledge of how to conserve energy when you're on the bike. And then also, usually, if you're a smooth racer, you're the type that looks ahead and is able to read what's going on well. But I feel that those racers just move through the pack better. And I think that a person that's surgy and is going to be constantly kind of, when I say surgy, I mean kind of negatively, in the sense that they're the type that's fingers on the brakes, ready to brake at any moment. They're jumpy in the group. That's when you're not going to move forward. One question that we actually had that we were planning to address, and we'll just kind of loosely address it, was from a person that is great at TTs and super high power to weight ratio.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So like 49 minute,
40K, insanely fast. Really fast time trialists too. But they were saying that they're terrible at crits and they can't move up. And man, like this is one thing that I feel it's so much a mental limitation that a lot of people put on themselves. Like, for example, in that question, he said, I'm not a good bike handler and all these problems get worse when it's wet. It gets worse for everybody when it's wet. That's how it goes. Yeah. It's not just you. And I know that in this situation, you might think that you're excessively, poor at this sort of thing, but if you can just so much of it is mindset when you're cutting through those breaks. And
it is though. So exactly what you said. I'm not a good bike handler. Well, you just set the bar extremely low, and that means right from the start, you're probably going into this with way more tension than is necessary, and you're not going to be a good bike handler. Tell yourself otherwise. Say, you know what? I'm not a good bike handler, but I'm going to get better today. Yep. So relax. Go in there with that attitude and try to find small bits of improvement.
Those sort of drills that we talked about earlier will really help you get comfortable because. Like crashing sucks on a bike, but you don't realize, and there's a fine line on a road bike compared to other disciplines, but like you said, you don't have to crash. Yeah. And if you can build up comfort on your bike and learning how to maneuver and separate yourself from that, you start to really gain a whole lot of confidence. So slow things down, get in a safe spot where you can work on drills like that, and it really helps. So we strayed on that one quite a lot.
I don't remember what the question was.
Hopefully it was helpful. Yeah. One quick thing that we were talking about there, in a post-race convo, like the foggy brainness that you're cooling down on the post-lap. There's a big guy, and he's a relatively big guy, and he's a good sprinter in our area. And he just out-sprinted me last year in a crit, and he said, man, you have like an insanely good snap. And I was like, yeah, thanks, man. And he's like, but you just can't hold it afterward. And I'm like, well, I'm 140 pounds, and you're about 200 and something. So, I mean, it makes sense. So, like, to your point, though, about, like, little guys, you have your strengths. You just have to make sure you use them right.
Yeah, use them right. They'll let's see, we can double dip. So if there's ever a little guy in front of me, I will pretty much not follow him because it's going to be as hard as that's the hardest way for me to race a race is on a 130-pound guy's wheel. The draft is bad. Right. He's going to be surgy and punchy and follow moves.
Nate's taking notes right now.
Yeah, I hope so.
He's like hoping that he can.
And then not a lot. Some little guys have the chance to not pedal. They do kind of on-off pedaling in the pack just because they get pulled along. Yeah. And that, if I have to pedal just slightly harder over and over, oh man, it drives me insane. So you'll see most guys you always pedal, but you don't necessarily have pressure on the pedals, right? And that kind of keeps you in safer, or that in another sense, that keeps you safer because you always have acceleration to get you out of things in addition to braking. Yep. So as far as not crashing, and even in the rain, it's the same thing. Always be pedaling, but not necessarily pedaling really hard. Yep. And in the pack, if you don't have that comfort, keep your legs moving. Like that just in turn loosens everything up and gives you another exit strategy, right? Like you can go faster rather than just braking. And a lot of the times, that's 50% of the time, that's the better way to go. Yeah. Is turn and accelerate, right? Yep.
Yeah, big guys try to use their momentum to their advantage, and you can throw some wrenches in the spokes that way.
But that does bring up a good point, and this is probably another tangent, that you can choose your brake mates. You don't have to, if you get up the road or you're with one person, in the case of what Pete just described, abandon that right away. If you know it's not something that's going to work, don't waste your time.
And you can, do you guys remember when a old Mark Pro rider Chuck Hutchinson lived here for a summer? Yeah. And so the way he rode a brake was the polar opposite the way that I would do it. And he would go so hard, and then
in his poles,
he would just go bury you. And so that was the race winning move. And so my only shot was to make it my brake instead of his brake. And so what I did is just start pedaling, not quite as hard as he would go, 500 to 600 watts and do 10 or 20 seconds and then like flick you through, and it's impossible. So then you would just roll past him and then roll up the speed. So his hard efforts didn't do anything. They weren't actually harder. If you're going fast enough, mitigated his high effort.
He could raise the tide a bit so he couldn't drop down enough to recover.
Yeah, and then do it over and over. And so all of a sudden, then he starts getting mad because his pulls that normally decimate people weren't doing anything anymore, because we would just accelerate back up to 35 miles an hour for the whole straight. And then his pull wouldn't do anything. It was easy.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time in my life where there was ever an aha moment where you can make it even if there's guys that you can't, that should be able to beat you, and figure out a way to make it your ride.
Did you figure that out on the fly, or did you know coming into the races?
I figured that out on the fly.
Races?
I remember going along the back stretch at Air Center and just being like, this is impossible. We're 5 minutes into this break. It's gonna win, or Chuck is gonna win no matter what. Yeah. And if I do this for 5 more minutes, like, I'm totally screwed. And so what can I do?
So you figured it out.
What can I do to make his pulls not as terrible for me? And it was just faster, right? Like, let's make it fast rather than that punchy. And so you can do that with anyone, right? Like, if it's any race, anybody you're with, make it your race rather than then don't let them dictate anything.
And they'll try to dictate it verbally.
Yeah. And you can just,
if you're in that group, and there's something to be said to working together to make your chances better in a group. And don't get me wrong, like, you don't want to be the guy that's just going to be hammering everyone and screwing up that rotation, and
that slows it down
too hard.
Almost all the time.
Yep. If you can keep it so that it's, the pace is consistent, then that's good. But I guess the main takeaway I'm trying to get at is words are used very much just like attacks in a race, and people are going to try to alter your psychology in one way or another to be able to convince you that you're not doing it right, or you need to do something that maybe you don't need to do. And breaks are certainly like that, because don't think that everyone suddenly is happy to be in the break and they're all going to have success. Like, when they're in that break, they think, oh, great, now it's just down to 4 of us, so now my odds are better. And then, it's just make sure that you watch out for that.
And pick someone to ride behind that works well with your fitness and your kind of riding style. Like, if there's someone who's going to yell at you a bunch, don't ride next to that person, right? Like, if there's someone who's talking, it's way easier to be away from that. So move 2 wheels back, and then all of a sudden you never have to deal with that. Skip a turn, eat at the back, whatever. Like, there's plenty of ways, but make it so it's your break, right? Yeah. You're in the right position. It's you're dictating the pace, even if everyone else is doing the work. Like, you purposely only pull hard enough to. It's all of a sudden, as soon as anyone's in a break, it should be their break. Yeah. Even if you're the slowest guy, if you have no sprint, it's still yours. Make it your break to go from there.
Another quick story on this. Last year, in a criterium extremely windy, we had a breakaway of 4 people. I think we were actually trying to chase you, Pete, and you were solo off the front, you jerk. Pete went from the gun, and I tried to hold it, and I was doing like 400 watts for almost a lap, and I was like, this is absurd. I'm in your draft. This shouldn't be happening. So I dropped off. But then 4 of us broke away, and we were chasing you, and there was one guy on the back, and he wasn't doing any work. So I just gradually moved myself over toward that gutter, so to just enough room for maybe two riders, 3 riders, so that they could fall into the echelon draft that we had going. And I remember at one point he came around from the back, pedaled up, like used a bunch of energy into the wind to get up to us, and then to yell at us, telling us that we shouldn't be riding him in the gutter. And I went, well, I mean, if you pulled,
do some work,
then maybe you wouldn't have to be up in the gutter, period. But so they'll always, when you get into those situations, it's a chess match.
Yeah, if someone's yelling at you, they're probably in trouble. You don't yell when you're having fun and you're going to win.
Exactly right.
So if someone's yelling, they're probably on the ropes anyways. Yep. So it's a good
turn the screws.
And it happens in every group ride, every race, anything. If someone's really vocal and yelling,
how do you typically deal with it?
Nothing.
Yeah,
I usually say nothing.
Here.
It's just
it's
easier.
the only way.
Yeah. You can't engage.
Don't engage.
Yep. You can't do it. Another question from Brad. He says, do you ever get saddle sores? If so, does that impede your training?
Yeah, I used to get them more. I think I've conditioned myself to be
tougher.
Gone a bit leathery.
Yeah, it's like a baseball mitt.
Gross.
No, I used to use chamois cream more often. Actually, I still use Doc skincare, but I generally save it for bigger, longer days, and I don't do that many long days anymore. And
that Doc skincare stuff is good, by the way.
It's really good. It smells good. It works really well. Also, I think saddle sores have to do more with bike fit and
I agree with that.
Position. Agreed. So as soon as your bike's really dialed, I was telling Nick here yesterday that if your bike fits properly, when you get on your bike, it should be like a sigh of relief, like, oh, I'm on my bike.
Except if it's a TT bike.
Except if it's a TT bike.
Then you're just very sad.
Yeah, then you're just sad.
Yeah.
But your normal road bike, your bike you ride all the time, you should get on and it should be like, this is my bike.
Exactly
I
right.
love this bike. And as soon as my fit was totally dialed and my saddle was dialed, I've never had a problem with saddle sores, with even my knee. I have really bad knees, and with the right proper spindles on my pedals, like my bike feels amazing. I get on it and I go, oh, this is the best. So that used to be more of a problem when I would switch equipment all the time, or ride different bikes, or I didn't have a fit. And actually, even if you've had a really good fit, you change all the time. So I think it's worth it to get another fit every couple year or two. Like if you really care, you change all the time, and whether your lifestyle changes or whatever, like your fit changes. But having a comfortable bike pretty much cures saddle sores in my book.
I've noticed that. You the same, Chad? I've noticed that too.
My fit changing over time?
But then the fit negating, or I should say dropping down the occurrence of saddle sores.
Yeah, I don't want to tempt fate here, but that's why I don't get saddle sores. I don't, because I know what my bike should feel like, and I know when it doesn't feel right. And
you're not a chamois cream guy, right?
No, I have some, and I'm always tempted to use it, but then I recognize there's really no need for it. And like I've said before, it's a Band-Aid. So if you're constantly using chamois cream, there's a deeper issue. Yeah,
there was I remember riding with a guy, actually, and he was just using buckets of chamois cream. Chad and I were riding with a guy, just using like full on a tub every time. So it was pretty intense.
Grizzly.
When it leaks out the bottom of the toilet.
Yeah, I was pushing through the chamois. It was pretty bad. I really do. I second that. And even on like rough mountain bike rides, which are usually a really great opportunity to develop something like that, because there's so much disconnect between you and the saddle, and jarring and movement. I don't have any of those problems, and I really do chalk it up to two things. Number one, I have really good bibs.
Good bibs are
I think
essential.
that's a very big thing. You have to, spending money on bibs guarantees that it should be good, but then making sure that you find the right bib short that works for you will make sure that it's really good. And there is no easy way to figure that out other than trial and error. But once you have that in place and a good bike fit, I don't have those problems.
Yeah, so we do lots of races that are really bad pavement, and you're going 30 miles an hour on the nose of your saddle, and there's damage that happens, but it's not saddle sores. It's just the actual bludgeoning of right.
That's what happens.
But saddle sores just all the right equipment just makes such a difference. The sigh when you get on your bike, that should be your check mark. If you sigh when you get on your bike because it feels so nice.
That's the giveaway. As soon as it's underneath you, you feel better.
Yeah, that's a good one. Max says, any tips for accelerating from a high cadence, about 120 RPM? He says, this is a track skill that I need to develop.
You're talking to the wrong person.
Yeah, it's high cadence work. You have to work on that. It's not going to magically take place, and it's not about practicing. I mean, you could go about it by practicing those short accelerations, but frankly, you need to get super comfortable with being there, which means long durations. And by long durations, I don't mean excessively long. Like start with a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, work up to where you can spin quickly for, 5, maybe 8 minutes at a high cadence, and then it's not unfamiliar territory, and you're basically just pushing the ceiling higher and higher and higher the whole time.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that high cadence, it has to be cultivated, and it's not. You don't do it by taking 100 RPM spin and practicing 150 RPM spin. You take it to 110 and spend some time there, 120 eventually spend some time there.
And putting out power at that cadence is so different,
that's
right?
a question too.
Oh, yeah.
But I also think it's just because is there a reason you need 120 RPMs? Like, not everybody should ride at 100. I mean, I guess if you're a track cyclist, then you have to put out the power, and it'll come eventually.
Exactly. Yeah. I can't think of a time where I would recommend anyone spend any sufficient lengths of time spinning over 110 RPM.
I'm a slow cadence guy through and through. I'm like I'll average 85 or 90 for races.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, that works really well for me. It doesn't fatigue my legs too much. But if I do 100 RPMs, I'll die. I mean, there's no way I would finish a race if I had to hold over 100 RPMs.
Yeah, it's funny. I noticed that in mountain bike racing, my cadence usually averages somewhere around 90. But then if I do a crit, especially, then my cadence tips up darn near toward 100. And I think that a lot of it is just because I'm not being as efficient as I need to in a criterium, because what I end up doing is I end up spinning up a bunch, trying to close down gaps and get into spots
turn on power with cadence. Instead of just
being smoother and then being in the right gear. And And mountain biking possibly gets drugged down a little just because of the nature of mountain biking, in the sense that you have really steep climbs and sections where you have to climb out of the saddle, and it's, different. But I used to like let that affect me more in terms of my cadence, but really if I'm using that as a guiding factor, it's tough. But sprinting at that high level is something that you totally have to build it, and it has to be incremental. I can't hit that home enough.
Yeah. And that would be one of the cases where 120 RPM spin is absolutely in line. I mean, 120, 130, 40, 50, whatever.
Yeah. And when if I have a really good sprint, it's at 120 or 130 RPMs, right? And there's something we had a nice we called it the sprint clinic, but we taught Brandon, who's down at San Dimas, the other product manager, how to sprint, because he's a climber 100% through and through, and he didn't know exactly what goes into a sprint. And so just like everything else, there's a lot that goes into doing something the correct way, and just being at 120 or 130 RPMs isn't the whole story for the crit or for the sprint. Like Brandon, I told him his arms should be sore after sprinting, right? Yeah. Like if you sprint for real on your bike, your arms and your back and your chest should be tired and sore the next day. And so when he was like, "Oh, I just had no idea that's what I was missing," and so we'll see how it turns out.
He's racing San Dimas.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty good.
Rainy San Dimas.
Rainy San Dimas, which
is the TT today.
Tomorrow. We talked him into going down early so he could save his legs for a whole day.
Atta baby.
Smart. Yeah, he's going to do well. He's a ex-pro triathlete that is going road. So it's pretty awesome to see.
He's a real good climber.
Kyle asks, and this is from Facebook, he says, can you talk about your gear and how you choose it? Bike, wheels, tires, helmet, aero road, or standard road, any other personal preferences on your setup? So, I mean, part of that is inherently you have sponsors, but then within that you have choices. So.
Yeah, and we get compliments on our bikes all the time, and I feel super lucky that somehow I got the best sponsors that in my book. If I could choose my bike, it would be very similar to how it is right now.
Yep.
So I think working with me, like I said, I always want to focus on my strengths. So my strengths are lots of time above 30 miles an hour. So I'm going to pick everything that goes along with that. So that's deeper wheels. I think I even run a set of 8.9s, which Envy doesn't make anymore. That way I hold on. They're like the golden ticket. If it's a race above 30 miles an hour, those usually come out because it feels different. I mean, it's the 7/8s that I run them all the time. Every single, like I just climbed Geiger on them the other day. I mean,
Jacob, that guy from San Luis Obispo, we rode 60 miles on dirt
on
single track on 7/8s. Yeah. So.
I would say I think wheels are super important, and wheels that suit your strength. Brandon just got a pair of Bontrager Aeolus 3s, which is kind of perfect for him. He needs something that has some aero advantage, but light enough that he can do something with him on the end of a climbing stage or something like that. Yep. So I think not only do you pick the best equipment that you can kind of find or afford or however that works, but you pick it to focus on your strengths, right?
Yeah.
I'm a lace-up shoe guy, which I think made a big difference. Actually, I would say the biggest difference I've ever had on my bike is those wider speed play spindles. Like I probably wouldn't ride bikes anymore. My knees would hurt too bad, my ankles, my hips.
Wow.
So the fact that I can run those wider ones and all of a sudden nothing hurts on me anymore made such a difference that's probably, if you took away one thing, I wouldn't be able to ride.
What was the difference in spindle length?
I'm the widest one they make now. I think I'm a half-inch wider total. So it looks like my legs are very wide. Actually, Peter Sagan runs the wider ones too. That's why he looks like he has
a wide stance.
Okay. Wide stance, and so then I even have him. My shoes are still all the way. My cleats are all the way in, so my stance is as wide as I can possibly get on a bike. And I'm a big guy, but I don't think I'm that wide technically. But whatever reason, I've got a little bit of lingering skateboarding injuries, and so it saved me pretty much. But pedal spindles, shoes that are comfortable, saddles that are comfortable. Now I'm a comfort guy, comfort and fast, right? If it's comfortable and it's fast.
You use the Pro logo, right?
Yeah.
Using the Dimension?
I got the new Dimension. And I've come from scratches. We were laughing. The real problem is when you find a really nice saddle, you have to buy them for all your bikes.
Yes, it's a lot. I'm looking at switching over to that Dimension right now. I'm fearing the
bill.
So
it's 4 bikes, all of a sudden you're like, well. But I've done 2 now, and I don't think the scratch actually works really well on a mountain bike, so I
Huh.
think I'm pretty happy with it on there, just the way that sits. But
Yep.
the dimension is a power derived saddle. You know, it's kind of like the Specialized Power, that shorter stub nose.
Yeah.
It's for putting out efforts.
Yeah.
It's not for hanging out. It's a racing saddle, I guess is what you would call it.
That makes sense.
And what gear combinations?
Ooh, I actually run a 1x.
That's right.
So my race bike's a 1x. I run ETAP even though it's not supposed to be a 1x setup. I've never had any. If you replace your chain frequently with a 1x and you have the narrow, wide chain ring, you never drop. But my chains only last 500 or 1,000 miles, and it's really noticeable. I think it's I run an 1132, which is just enough to get me up and over stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, chains last 500 miles, 1,000 miles.
Yeah, not very long.
Not very long.
And how do you know they're going?
And they start. The shifting doesn't go off, but there's some slack. Like you can hear the slack in the chain. And now, last year, I didn't realize that fast enough. But now I just, new chain every 500 miles, and that's sort of the price I pay. I think
we've talked about that too. The best way, if you can, is to get a few chains beforehand and then just get quick links for each one. And then when you can just switch over chains somewhat regularly, you can actually get more life out of them that way. Just keep everything clean and switch them out. It's a handy thing. You don't have to go into the whole waxing thing and all that, but it's a good way to do it.
Fresh chains also fix your shifting 99% of the time. Like if you have if I'm a bad mechanic, so if I just replace everything pretty frequently, all of a sudden my bike works all the time.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
And you don't have to mechanic.
I don't have to mechanic if you replace things. So that's what I've learned in my old age is replace chains. I usually buy a new chain ring and a new cassette every year. I don't ride that much. I mean, I don't know my mileage, but maybe a few thousand, 4,000 miles. I don't know. I don't ride that much, though, to be totally honest. Lots of race miles, but just new equipment. I mean, it sucks to buy $500 worth of stuff every year, but you spend more than that on getting someone to fix it, something breaking, things like that. But my bike is so perfect. It's like getting on a race car, and it just feels right. So I'm super happy with my setup.
Yeah. From Stubbsy on YouTube says, "Are you going to join the other three in their TT race? # Team Pete."
Yes. I think what I'm going to do is we toss this around. I'm going to do clip-ons and a TT helmet, kind of the budget TT build.
Yeah.
So I'm
Which is
going to run.
actually what I was going to do originally.
I know.
This is going to be really cool.
So my goal is to beat Nate pretty much with clip-ons and a TT helmet. So that's like the $500. You're in $500 to turn your road bike into a TT bike.
Yep.
And your NV7.8s, what wheel set?
I think I'm going to run exactly as I would race it. So that's awesome. That's my plan. You know,
8.9s?
I think Brandon's going to use those 8.9s for his.
Gotcha.
But I want this to be exactly the cheap TT setup where all I do is buy clip-ons and a TT helmet.
Nice.
And see how it goes.
That's awesome. I'd love to get that message across. Show people you don't have to have a fully dedicated TT rig to do a good TT.
Yeah, and it's position. And so I'm kind of excited because I love the way my road bike fits, and I ride on my tops of my handlebars sometimes.
And that's to clarify, like when he's on the hoods like that, it's not like he's upright. You folded arms, and you're like basically your forearms are parallel to the top of the bars.
Yeah,
and you're laid down.
It's a pretty crouched position.
We were just talking about this the other day. I've set my bars up to ride in my hoods, so I ride my hoods 95% of the time, even at maybe on the last lap, or if I'm actually going to sprint, it'll be in the drops. But I corner just as well in the hoods, and I keep my bars super low so that I'm set up for my hoods being the aggressive position rather than my drops. So if you look, I have a lot of saddle bar drop, but it's because I race my hoods.
Gotcha.
My race setup is my hoods. So that should lend itself to putting clip-ons and feeling pretty similar. So I need to get some, though, just so I spend time like you guys. I sort of feel like if you show up to the race, I can do anything for an hour, so I might as well just hammer. I'll probably be really sore the next day.
There's something to that.
Either the no acclimation or the full acclimation. I might do the no acclimation.
And if you do that and you win, then it'll be just really, really bad.
You come into it on a familiar bike and well rested. I mean, sharp, fresh, ready to go. You can do quite a lot.
Yeah. That's a good point. The last one that we'll cover is what does the winner of the TT get, and what does the loser have to do?
Oh no!
I don't think
I'll let you guys.
Yeah, I think that just there's going to be one winner, the rest will be losers, and then we'll all have to suffer the gloating of the winner.
That about sums it up.
Yep.
Yeah, bragging rights, and then just suffering for everybody else.
I think Dave's gonna win.
I think so too.
Yeah, and he's the guy who will lord it over us in no way.
Yeah,
he's
just gonna go out and do his job.
He's gonna be filming that day for the documentary, and then he'll just put the camera down, get on the bike, and he'll beat us. So. Dave Christensen, he'll actually be our guest next week from Mark Pro, and we'll be talking all with their team. And you can actually look forward to this Tuesday coming up, or I should say the next Tuesday. There will be, much like we had a team camp podcast with Clif Bar, we did one with Mark Pro literally the next day. And we went over a lot of the kind of the similar things, and then we talked a lot of race tactics too. And we'll have a live podcast with Dave Christensen. He's a pro road racer and also our filmmaker. So it'll be pretty interesting stuff.
A tale of two camps, right?
A tale of two camps. That's it. Awesome. Somebody threw in a donut at the very end. Thank you. Yes. So we appreciate you guys joining us. If you joined us live on Facebook or YouTube, thank you so much for the questions. Sorry we couldn't get to them all. We had the other questions that we planned to get to, and we didn't get to any of them. But we're really glad. That's a really good problem to have. We'll be live again next week, same time. It'll be Thursday at 8, but keep your eye on those podcast feeds for a special episode coming up on Tuesday. Pete, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys.
Hopefully Nate goes on vacation more often so we can have you in more often.
Yeah,
right?
we can make Nate go on vacation more often.
I think he'd appreciate that too. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll talk to you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.